What it do, cuckolds? It's your boy the Hater. It's Hater Mania, which means that once in a while your boy's gonna do multiple vids a day. Cucks, this is one of those days. I decided to watch Smackdown, and I was pleasantly surprised that Smackdown this week was in Barcelona. More on that later, you know what I'm saying? But the show, in my personal opinion, was not good once again. But as usual, we gotta go through it segment by segment. All right. Without further ado, let's get started. The show opens up with LA Knight coming out. This is a great way to start a show. The show should start out like this every single week because LA Knight is just entertaining. He is massively over, and the crowd is massively into the show. And therefore, they're also massively into LA Knight. I'm not sure, if it's just the fact that they love LA Knight or because it's the beginning of the show, but nevertheless, they're just going crazy over LA Knight, right? He comes out, and eventually he gets joined by Big Jim, Jimmy Uso, whose entire shtick now is, I don't know what I'm doing at WrestleMania. Hey, you want to hang out with me? Basically, that's what he's saying, right? And then, Solo Sikoa and, the new Bloodline, who are now completely relegated into mid-card nobodies, they come out, and Solo says Jacob Fatu deserves a title shot. I don't know why Jacob Fatu would deserve a title shot. Jacob Fatu is boring as shit. I know people like him, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, actually, where I go into my mini rant about this bullshit, right? Long story short, this leads to a 6-man tag match because Braun Strowman comes to help, right? The good guys, Braun Strowman, LA Knight, and Big Jim, completely destroy the new Bloodline. The new Bloodline, keep in mind, on Survivor Series only 4 months ago, were in the main event wrestling like CM Punk and Reigns. Now they can't beat Big Jim, But whatever, it is what it is. After this, they have a boring-ass interview with Jade, who's wearing a long wig. I like Jade, but I never understood this whole wig business. It's so clear she's wearing a wig. You can see the wig line. I don't understand how this is a thing, but it is. Liv Morgan and Raquel come out, and they talk some shit, but nothing comes of it, other than, Jade Cargill's gonna wrestle one of them next week or something. It's unclear because she's like, I'll see you, next week, or I'll see you whenever, right? But I'm not sure who she was talking to, presumably Liv Morgan. But Liv Morgan and Raquel are unaffected by this, so nobody cares. Now it's time for B-Fab versus Charlotte. B-Fab comes out and cuts a pretty decent promo on her way out, but she does so in shit Spanish. When the Hater was in undergrad, I took an Italian class, and the Hater got an A in it because the Hater had some experience with Italian beforehand. But there was this one girl who I'll never forget because she would mispronounce every word and she would make it sound all American. So it's, kind of like what B-Fab did tonight. For example, if she wants to say necesito, right? She'll be like, necesito. That's how she was talking. I thought B-Fab was from Colombia. Or I confused her with somebody else. Whatever. She doesn't speak Spanish clearly. But the other parts of the promo were pretty decent. She delivered it well. She has some presence, B-Fab's a complete colossal jobber. But, in a company where we have the wrestlers that we have, B-Fab deserves at least one chance. She's like the female Cedric Alexander for the Hater, in that she deserves one chance to get it done. Anyways, that shit went down, and nobody could give a flying fuck about anything, right? The match should be 35 seconds because Charlotte is going to be in a women's title match at WrestleMania, and B-Fab has never won a match in her entire career. But the match goes on forever, right? Eventually, Charlotte hits the natural selection, which looks like shit. This idea that Charlotte Flair is good in the ring is a complete lie, because I've seen Charlotte Flair wrestle many times, and this is a great example. She does the natural selection. It always looks different, and it always looks shitty. It's not a believable finisher. It's really stupid. She does it anyways, puts on the figure 4 leg lock, turns it into a figure 8, and wins. She keeps the hold on, and Tiffany comes out and attacks her. We go into commercial break. We come back. It's time for Miz TV, featuring the cuckster himself, Cucky Rhodes, right? We come back. The Miz is in the ring, I think. I don't remember the exact details, to be honest. But basically, Tiffy and Charlotte are still wrestling each other. They're still not wrestling. They're still fighting each other. So that was a nice touch to show that, they're really serious. They really mean it. But at the same time, I don't care about this. I'd much rather watch Miz TV. So then eventually Cookie comes out and Miz cuts him off. Like as the fans are gonna go, whoa, you know, Miz cuts him off and he says, you know, I'm here to ask the hard-hitting questions, I should say. Right? Cody Rhodes then all of a sudden spontaneously grows balls and attacks the Miz. He just goes up to him, kicks him, does the crossroads on him, reminding me that the crossroads is just not a believable or legitimate finisher. It's just dumb. He basically just grabs the guy and then turns around. But anyways, that's what happened, so that's what I'm going to talk about, right? Then Cody Rhodes takes the easy way out. He gets the mic and he says, I have no interest in talking to anybody unless it's John Cena. If you have the balls, come out on Monday Night Raw, right? So this was a complete waste of time. You know, you flew in Miz and you flew in Cookie Rhodes to have this meaningless, in my opinion, segment, right? Nothing happened. Cody Rhodes just basically came out and said, I have no interest in talking to the Miz, and beat him up. That's it. Because we already knew that Cody Rhodes wants to confront John Cena. So nothing was advanced yet again, and we only have like 9 more of these. You know, 9 more opportunities to advance the storyline. Today was one opportunity. They didn't do it, so I fucking hated this completely. The only good thing I can say about this segment is that it lasted so little time that we were able to move on to the next thing, which is always good when we have a segment involving the cuckster himself, Cookie Rhodes. That's how that went down. That's how the haters saw it, and that's what the haters got to say. Next up, we go backstage. Nakamura, who used to be a samurai last week, is now dressed like Johnny Depp. He looks like a Japanese Johnny Depp who's a little bit gayer, you know what I mean? But it is what it is. I know Nakamura's not gay, but he's going for that gay look, you know, that like stylist look with like the long blonde hair, and it doesn't fit him in his current samurai gimmick. Like if his character was going to be like Nakamura's gay all of a sudden, which would honestly be a fun little character change, right? If he's going to go for that, it's one thing, but he's going for that look while being the samurai. Like why would a samurai bleach his hair? You know what I mean? But anyways, nevertheless, Nakamura's there. He's asking Aldis for a rematch. Damian Priest comes out, and basically he says to Nakamura, like, he doesn't say anything. He's talking to Nick Aldis. Nakamura says something in Japanese. Damian Priest gets upset, and basically he says to Nakamura, I'm going to say something to you in a different language, you know, in a language that the people of España can understand. Then he says, I want to beat your ass, right? Now, speaking of España, up in this bitch, you know what I mean? For those that don't know, the history of Barcelona specifically, but Spain, and why the people of Spain that are from Barcelona have a lisp, right? They don't say Barcelona, they say Barcelona, right? They don't say Ibiza, they say Ibiza, right? And the reason for that is basically back in the day, there was a great king in Spain. And this king, who may have been a ancestor of Cookie Rhodes, because this king also had a lisp, right? And the people, as a result of the king having a lisp, they all decided to talk like they can't speak, right? They all pretended to have a speech impediment to make so the king wouldn't feel self-conscious about his lisp, right? That's exactly how that went down. This got your boy thinking, maybe back in the day in the Isle of Samoa, everyone talked normal. And then they also had like a king, but this king didn't have a lisp. This king was just retarded, right? So then a lot of Samoans started acting like something they're not, you know? They're from Polynesia, they're from Oceania, but for some reason, they just act like they're black guys. And when I say black guys, I know some people get mad at that. You know, obviously I'm talking about the black stereotype. The hater is very aware that black men come in many shapes and sizes and many forms of speaking. Some of them are from the ghetto. Some are rich people, just like every other group. But clearly, the Samoan wrestlers, at least, I don't know about Samoans in general, but the Samoan wrestlers, they emulate this, right? They emulate this, like, thug lifestyle, and it's like, quite frankly, I'm just not impressed at all, especially when they all look like shit, you know what I mean? Like, they're all, like, fat losers, but more on that later. So the hater got to thinking, maybe the Samoans had, like, a king who was retarded, and he decided to act like a culture that he's not part of, and then, out of mercy, all the poor Samoans decided to act that way for the king, and it just kind of stuck. Kind of like how the Barcelona people speak the way they do. Anyways, this leads to a direct match. All of a sudden, Damian Priest is in the ring. Nakamura goes from gay Johnny Depp to samurai again. I don't know what happened. Like, Damian Priest went to the ring, and as Damian Priest was walking out, Nakamura went and put on some makeup and samurai'd himself, switching gimmicks. I'm not sure what happened. I didn't like it. Nevertheless, the match starts. Now, I will say this. the match was a 0 because it didn't end, right? Nakamura was about to get his ass beat, as you would expect, and then Drew McIntyre comes and attacks Damian Priest. This is a stupid feud because Drew McIntyre has like actual targets, He has like CM Punk still in his radar. He has Seth Rollins, and he has Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre should be put into the Roman Reigns, like Seth Rollins storyline where he belongs, because when he came back, he was like, I have an issue with Roman Reigns, and he hasn't pursued that yet. Now he's going after like Damian Priest for no reason, just because they like had a moment at Elimination Chamber. It's really whack. But anyways, he comes out and attacks Damian Priest. As Damian Priest is starting to get up, Nakamura just Kinshasas him in the back of the head. I really like this because, number one, this is more consistent character work from Nakamura. If he's this like savage type samurai, I can understand why he would attack somebody. You know what I mean? Why he would attack somebody from the back, right? And like also during a segment that, even though it was his match, after that, usually like people like that don't get involved, right? The person that's in the match just kind of rolls away and goes backstage while like the beatdown, continues. But in this case, that's not how it went down. In this case, Nakamura got his lick. He got his lick in, right? And it was completely justified because Damian Priest, who I like more than Nakamura, but in this segment, Damian Priest basically just threatened Nakamura for no reason backstage. Maybe he was also surprised that Nakamura changed gimmicks from Japanese angry samurai to gay Johnny Depp, But he picked on Nakamura, so he deserved that Kinshasa to the back of the head. Then Drew McIntyre starts whooping his ass a bit more thoroughly. Then we have DIY backstage, and Motor City Machine Guns come out, and this is like one of the worst backstage segments of all time because they talk about how DIY betrayed them like 3 months ago. It's completely meaningless. Like, all right, fucking get over it, man. They're like, don't think we forgot that you betrayed our friendship. Nobody cares, you know what I'm saying? Nobody cares about this pre-established Motor City Machine Guns DIY relationship that they just told us exists. Nobody cares at all, Nobody cared when it happened, and nobody cares now. Then after this, Orton comes out and he's billed as being like 290 pounds. He looks like an absolute beast. By comparison, Carmelo Hayes looks like half a man. He looks like the half man that he is next to Orton. This is just ridiculous. This is now like at the level of Kane versus like Jeff Hardy. The only difference was that Kane was about a foot bigger than Orton. Not a foot, but he was about 5 inches taller than Orton. And Jeff Hardy was about 5 inches taller, probably more, than Carmelo Hayes. People just don't realize how this was. It's just like the same thing would happen back in the day. Like, Kane was bigger than Orton. Orton was a little bit bigger than Jeff Hardy. And then that was basically it. There were no people smaller than Jeff Hardy. You know what I mean? Maybe like Taka Michinoku and a few outliers like that. But generally speaking, Jeff Hardy was considered like a small guy. He was a light heavyweight. Today, Jeff Hardy would be like definitely easily a heavyweight. Because he's like 6'3" or whatever, 6'2", 6'3". And he's like, he's not massive, obviously, but he's muscular enough to like clearly be over 200 pounds, right? Carmelo Hayes is like 165 probably, You have all these like beta men, and this becomes clear when Randy Orton has to be inflated to be 290, right? He has to be inflated because it's like we remember him against Kane, and Kane would just stand like head and shoulders above him, and Randy Orton was the little guy during that. Randy Orton, when he was like starting out in his career, and he's put on a lot of muscle to be fair, but at no point in his career was Randy Orton a big guy. You know what I mean? He was never a big guy. He was tall, but he was never presented as a big guy. He was presented as this like, upper level light heavyweight, right? Like Edge. It's the same kind of thing, right? Like in a lot of the WWE video games, Edge was a light heavyweight, Like he was not a heavyweight. Today, Edge would be like, Edge clearly is a massive heavyweight. He's like the same size as the biggest guys in the company, So this really shows like the shrinking standards that we've had because Randy Orton, like Carmelo Hayes, like should be wrestling Taka Michinoku. Carmelo Hayes has no business being on the main roster ever, if you ask me, just in terms of size alone. But Carmelo Hayes does have a lot of cool moves, which he actually does in this match. The match ends after Carmelo Hayes hits the first 48. Orton completely no-sells it, RKOs him like the jobber that he is, and pins him. Orton then helps him out, which is completely inconsistent with the character that Orton established last week, saying that he's starting to hear voices again. But then all of a sudden, Carmelo Hayes refuses to shake hands, so Orton RKOs him again, starting to go crazy. He goes to the corner to set up the punt. Owens comes out and saves Carmelo Hayes for some reason. Then him and Orton start fighting on the outside. Owens pushes Orton into the post and runs away. Nothing happened here. It wasn't anything crazy. I would have liked to see Orton just punt Carmelo Hayes in the head. And if you don't want to do that to Carmelo Hayes, you could have easily just put in Garza Garza Jr. in there or Berto. You could have put in like fucking Joaquin Wilde. It doesn't matter. You could have had him punch somebody to show that he means business, But it could have even been Carmelo Hayes because, let's be real, Carmelo Hayes is, in my opinion, already like 1 foot out. Like, he can stick around and have like a R-Truth, like, Nathan Frazier-esque career, but it's going to be just that. Like I think the idea that Carmelo Hayes is going to be a massive star, I think anybody who's smart has now given up on that idea. And let us remember for 1 second. When everyone said Carmelo's going to be massive on the main roster, the hater told you guys, this is not going to happen, right? So maybe all the know-it-alls need to start giving the hater a little bit of credit. Because when I say Trick Williams and Obafemi and Tony D'Angelo are going to flop completely, right? People are like, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, you told me the same thing about Carmelo Hayes. According to all of you, Carmelo Hayes was going to be this multiple-time world champion. According to most people, like Montez Ford, more on him later, was supposed to be the world champion multiple times by now. According to a lot of people, Grayson Waller, remember that? That's my personal favorite because I called that one a million years ago. I'm like, this guy's never going to make it. People are like, Grayson Waller's going to be great on the main roster. You just wait and see. Here we are. I've been right like 3 times out of 3 of the ones that I mentioned. When have I ever been wrong? Like, honestly, when have I made a prediction, like, about wrestling and I've been wrong? Like, maybe I said, like, Rhea Ripley's not going to be a massive star. I still stand by that. Like, that has yet to happen. I wouldn't call her a massive star yet. But even if I'm wrong about that, let's talk about male wrestlers. Because I will admit, the female wrestlers, it's just hard to predict, Because, like, tomorrow Naomi could be a main eventer and it shouldn't shock anybody, And then Bianca Belair could be a massive jobber. That shouldn't shock anybody either. There's too much variability. But for the men, I've been 100%. Anyways, after this, we go backstage and it's time for whatever the fuck you want to call them, the new bloodline. They cut a promo. Solo Sikoa says, it's time, Jacob. It's time. Then Tama Tonga says, it's time to run the play. Yeah. Like, these guys are just the biggest dorks of all time. Like, these are people that in every context, everywhere they've been the dorks. They're probably even in the Samoan community, the cool Samoans are like, oh shit, here comes Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga. Oh my god, these guys are such losers. Stay away from them. They're just dorks. They don't have any charisma. They don't have any marketability in any capacity. They're not entertaining, right? They don't have anything going for them. Now, I know a lot of people think that Jacob Fatu has charisma because he screams just like Samoa Joe did, just like Solo Sikoa does, just like Umaga does, right? But he's the same fucking shit, you know what I mean? I don't like any of these guys. Solo Sikoa can stay. But in my opinion, Tama Tonga is obviously a jobber, but like Jacob Fatu is not this big a deal. He just cuts a yelling promo, right? Which is just ridiculous. I don't believe in it at all. Wade Barrett has to sell it. He's like, if someone yelled at me, if he yelled at me like that, I wouldn't get on the plane. Like, Wade Barrett would beat the shit out of this guy. Even now, probably. You know what I mean? Wade Barrett would just completely murder him. But Wade Barrett has to play this, subservient role just to sell the unsellable point that Jacob Fatu is a tough guy. He's 6'2". Like I said, I looked up Jeff Hardy's height. I believe he was 6'3". He's 1 inch shorter than Jeff Hardy and maybe 30 pounds heavier. And he does simpler moves. And people are like, oh, how can this guy do this? He's so large. He's 6'2". He's like a regular fucking wrestler. You know what I mean? He's a regular guy. And the implication, because in this video, in this promo, he was threatening Braun Strowman. This is just absurd. He's like, I'm going to dog walk you. Honestly, there should be a rule that says that you shouldn't be able to talk about people that are that much physically superior than you in any capacity that way. Because, if Braun Strowman wanted to, he could go into that room and he could just beat the shit out of all 3 of them at the same time. You know what I mean? The idea that Jacob Fatu is going to dog walk Braun Strowman is about as believable as I'm going to dog walk Randy Orton. You know what I mean? It's just not going to happen. It's silly. It's stupid. It would be one thing if, for example, if Braun Strowman was like Omos, right? Where he's tall, right? And he's decently muscular, but nothing crazy, right? Omos is not this freak of nature aside from his height. If he was a regular sized dude, he'd be a regular person, right? Braun Strowman is not only a massive beast in terms of height, but he's just completely yoked. Jacob Fatu is a short, fat guy, and he's like, I'm going to dog walk. He's like, you really think you can hang with me? And it's like, anyone that's watching that's been in a fight in real life is like, this is just silly at this point. Jacob Fatu should be able to talk this way to maybe Channing Stax Lorenzo from NXT. Maybe he can talk this way to Ashanti the Adonis. He can talk to those types of people like that who are smaller than him, But to talk to someone like Braun Strowman like this is just stupid, And I don't like it because earlier in the night, they did the whole thing where Jacob Fatu, just gets beaten, and then he just gets up and no-sells everything. And people are like, how is he still standing? Then Jacob Fatu destroys Braun Strowman a little bit, and then he goes to the ramp, and he runs down to the ringside, and he is going to like smash Braun Strowman into the barricade. He completely misses. This guy is just such a shit wrestler. Like, the moonsault looks like shit. He just does a moonsault, lands on his knees, and then touches the guy with his body, which is good in terms of safety, but it's not good looking, right? And then he does the move where he just like runs into the barricade. He completely misses Braun Strowman, like clear as day. He just basically hits his ass on the barricade, and the barricade breaks. And people are like, oh my God, how did... Nothing happened, bro. He just threw his ass into the barricade, and then Braun Strowman has to suffer the ultimate indignity, and that is like pretend that he's hurt, you know? It's really dumb. I hated this. In the end, Jacob Fatu says, you know what I mean? And then he says, fa, two, and nobody gives a flying fuck. Then Gunther comes out, and he says, oh, I should point out one other thing real fast. This is actually very important. During the Orton match, they're scanning through the crowd, and they see Lamine Yamal, right, in the crowd, like excited as shit, filming the match with Randy Orton in it, right? Now, for those that don't know, Lamine Yamal is arguably the next big thing in world soccer. Lamine Yamal is one of the best players in the world, and he's only like 17, okay? Lamine Yamal is a big fucking deal in Europe, and honestly around the world, right? But in Europe, he's massive, right? Because he's like the future of soccer, which is the biggest sport in the world. Now, if people were smart, they have an opportunity here. They have a legitimate A-list celebrity in Lamine Yamal, right? I know that most of you probably don't know who he is, but if you watch soccer, you would know who he is, right? Now, you have a A-list celebrity who is actually excited to be there because he's 17 and he's watching Randy Orton, who he may have been watching growing up, right? He's an icon already in the city of Barcelona, right? And instead of highlighting this, they just point to him like he's a regular fan. I had to rewind and check to see if it was Lamine Yamal, and I wasn't even sure, and I was going to Google it, but then Wade Barrett says, like, Lamine Yamal, you know? And I'm just like, this is just ridiculous, you know? You take, like, 30 seconds off of, like, Raw to show me, like, the guy that got 7th place in some ridiculous bull riding competition that nobody ever watches. Like, we're talking about, like a Z-list celebrity. If this guy walked in his hometown, and he was in his hometown, on Main Street, nobody would know who the fuck he is. If Lamine Yamal walks in basically every European city, every major European city for sure, everyone's going to know who he is, right? And you don't highlight Lamine Yamal, who not only is more famous than literally everyone that they've shown in those moments combined. Like, if you take, you know, whatever the fuck, like Vanessa Hudgens, the bull rider guy, the irrelevant country singer, Hardy, who the fuck Hardy is, right? You take all these guys combined, and they are not together, they are less famous than Lamine Yamal. And they all looked miserable. Like, they have, like, Vanessa Hudgens, like, hot girls like wrestling. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Lamine Yamal is actually there excited. You have an opportunity to highlight a world-level celebrity being excited, and you don't take it. Wade Barrett has to be like, that's Lamine Yamal. You know, he's excited. And whatever, it is what it is. But it really pissed me off, you know. Then Gunther comes out and says, a la Madrid, which is like him showing that he prefers Madrid, Real Madrid, to Barcelona, right? Just to get some cheap heat. I like that, right? Gunther then calls out Axiom, who apparently is from Spain. Who the fuck knew? I automatically assumed Axiom was a Mexican wrestler because he wears a mask. So I thought he was just a luchador. But whatever, it is what it is. This should be a squash match, even though Axiom is in his hometown. But it's not. Axiom does a lot of cool things. Like, not cool things, but he does a lot of things that you wouldn't expect him to do in terms of, like, what this match is supposed to be. Gunther hits the powerbomb. Axiom kicks out. Right? That was kind of a little bit surprising. But it doesn't matter because I know he's going to lose anyways. Then Axiom hits the golden ratio, which is basically a jumping kick, you know? Like, I never understood this move. Like, it's been in, like, several WWE games. It's just like this running super kick, basically. But sometimes he jumps and falls like Liu Kang. It is what it is, right? Then eventually, Gunther counters, like, what effectively turns into, like, a triangle type move. Like, he counters into a powerbomb, picks him up, does a lariat, picks him up, powerbombs him again. And that's the end of that. You know, nothing crazy here. Gunther then puts a sleeper on him, and nobody helps him out, I don't think. I don't remember how this ended. Then, now, I know this video is running a little long, but I don't give a shit. We have to talk about this. This will probably get its own video later, but Paul Heyman comes out and gets booed, right? Actually, I'm not going to delve into my opinions on Paul Heyman too much. That's going to be a different video. But Paul Heyman, in my opinion, is just an overrated hack. Like, he's not good at the things that we pretend he's good at. He's not good at booking wrestling because he booked his company into bankruptcy. And he's not good at getting anybody over. Paul Heyman, I'm going to argue that Paul Heyman got absolutely not one person over. The only argument you can make is maybe he got over Brock Lesnar. But in my opinion, Brock Lesnar was getting over with or without Heyman. But every other person that Heyman managed is either someone that like was already going to be a big star, like Roman Reigns or CM Punk, or people that were already stars, I should say, because Roman Reigns was like a multiple-time WrestleMania main eventer before Paul Heyman got his hands on him, CM Punk as well, like he wasn't a WrestleMania main eventer, but CM Punk was the champion already, right? And then nobody talks about the failures of Paul Heyman, right? All this shit that people like the neckbeard community asked for, they got and nothing came of it, Number one, Curtis Axel, remember him? But number two, Cesaro. I'm going to talk about that in a different video. Primarily, Paul Heyman, though, gets booed because like the way that the segment was presented is they showed like what happened with Roman Reigns on Monday, and they're like, up next, and it shows like CM Punk, Roman Reigns, and fucking Seth Rollins, right? So you're hoping that Roman Reigns is going to be there. Now, the hater's a little smarter than that. The hater knew that obviously Roman Reigns is not going to come to Barcelona, which apparently is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Spain is a country that I've never been to, but I'd love to go, So there you have it. He does that shit. It doesn't work out very well. Paul Heyman says like, basically the whole point of Paul Heyman being there is him to say that Roman Reigns is not here tonight, but he'll be there in Bologna. He gets booed. He tells me to buy a ticket and fly to Bologna, which I thought was like clever, but it doesn't address the fact that the fans are pissed off. Nobody wants to see Paul Heyman. And that's the problem. WWE thinks that Paul Heyman is like a valid substitute for Roman Reigns. Nobody gives a shit about Paul Heyman. He has no star power. Paul Heyman is just a fat dork. Nobody gives a fuck about this loser, So then he leaves and he just says like, he tries to do his catchphrases. It's like, Paul Heyman shouldn't have catchphrases. That's not a prediction, it's a spoiler. Go fuck yourself, whatever. It is what it is. Then the Street Profits are in the back, and apparently this match is happening too. I completely forgot. Nobody could give a flying fuck about this. They do a goofy handshake, and I see now that they've completely shed this like we're serious gimmick. They're just now back to being the regular old Street Profits, right? They do a goofy handshake, which really proves that both these guys are complete losers. You know what I mean? Like, two guys doing like an elaborate handshake is appropriate maybe when they're 15, maybe if they're 16, if one or more of them are retarded. But if you're like in your 20s and 30s and you're still doing these goofy handshakes, it's time to be a man. It's time to grow up. Speaking of being a man, Montez Ford wears like a mink coat, I get it, but you're not Conor McGregor. You're never going to be that cool. And quite frankly, you're just a dork who does the handshake that everyone expected to be a world champion, and it's now just a nobody, right? Angelo Dawkins, like, I would be lying if I said that Angelo Dawkins is not athletically impressive, I actually think Angelo Dawkins is like very underrated in the ring because he always does cool shit and he's strong as a bull. But he's boring as shit, Montez is clearly the superior one, but it doesn't matter because they're both jobbers. They have a match with DIY. Long story short, DIY hit the fairy tale ending super kick. So like, Ciampa gets the fairy tale ending on Dawkins, and then while he has him up, Gargano super kicks him, fairy tale ending, but Dawkins kicks out. Then the opposite does not happen when I think the Street Profits pin Gargano, but maybe it was Ciampa. I think it was Gargano. They pin him after like the sky high into the fall from heaven, or whatever the fuck it's called, the frog splash that Montez Ford does, right? Another splash finisher. But I will give Montez a pass because Montez is allowed to have a splash finisher because he actually makes it look good. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you can make it look good, go ahead. If you have the best splash, you should do the splash. But if he has the best splash, I don't want to see Jey Uso or Jimmy Uso do a splash. It is what it is. That happened. And then they win, right? And then they like hug. And then the announcers say like it's been 4 years and 2 months to get back to the top. And the Street Profits are now, you heard it here first, 2-time tag team champions. I thought they were like 5-time tag team champions. I didn't know these guys were jobbers for this long. They're tag team champions. And I honestly do believe that this is the last rodeo for them. I have a feeling that the next thing on the deck for Montez and Dawkins is that, for better or for worse, Dawkins is going to betray Montez. Montez is going to win, and then they're going to both be released eventually, right? They don't have what it takes. I think the proof is in the pudding. They should, like Montez should have like a mid-card career, He should. Like, he deserves that much, And even Dawkins, because of his in-ring abilities, he deserves one opportunity, as a single star. Because, let's be honest, like, Santos Escobar has gotten infinite opportunities. Like, they're better than Santos Escobar, but I don't think they're going to get their opportunities. So I think this is it. I hope I'm wrong, but I feel like that's it. Overall, the show had some good moments, primarily the LA Knight segment, because LA Knight is the only wrestler in the world who is actually over. Everybody else, though, just doesn't feel good enough, if I'm being completely honest. None of the people, other than LA Knight and, I'll say Randy Orton, out of like the fact that it's Randy Orton we're talking about, out of respect, I guess, for his past accomplishments. But honestly, in my opinion, aside from LA Knight, nobody in this company is over in the slightest. Nobody in this company is interesting in the slightest. And this really showed here, That, plus the absence of any kind of star power. Cody Rhodes showed up and he didn't even cut a suit promo, which I liked, but I know a lot of fans didn't like. And the booing of Roman Reigns. You have the nerve to have the first ever Smackdown in Spain, right? In the history of Spain. And then you throw in Paul Heyman just to tell them that he's not there tonight, but he'll be there next week. This is just stupid at this point. So that being said, this SmackDown gets a solid 1 out of 10. It's only not a 0 out of 10 because of LA Knight. Yeah.